Okay guys, before we get on to the next lecture where we'll see the backwards VLOOKUP in action, I just wanted to show you another method of doing exactly the same thing. Now personally I use the other method, the one that we've just looked at, much more frequently, mainly because I learned that one a long time ago and this one's comparatively new to me. But try them both out and whichever one works best for you, stick to that one. They both do exactly the same thing. This method does use the VLOOKUP, but we introduce another one of Excel's built-in functions, and that's the choose function. So let's just take a quick look at choose first. So equals choose. Our index number, for now we're going to type 1 and that will become clear Y in just a second. I'm going to hit comma and then enter our second argument, which you can see from the tooltip says value 1. So I'm just going to type the word first. Close the quotes, hit comma, and you can see our next argument is value 2. So I'm just going to type second and close quotes. When I close the brackets and hit enter, you can see that we get the value first returned because of our value arguments. This is value 1, this is value 2, and we've chosen to return the first one, the index 1. So if we were to choose 2 and hit enter, we get second. Now we've just used that and we've actually typed the values in here as the arguments. So let me just come out of that for a second. Actually, let me just type over that for a second and type first, second, third here. And just to, I can't type third, there we go. I think that's right. Okay, so now let's have a look at the same thing again. So choose, open brackets. Again, for now, we're just going to say index 1, comma, and then we're going to load the values by pointing at other cells. So now we're going to say this cell, comma, this cell, comma, this cell, and then close off the brackets. So there you go. By returning index 1 of our 3 values, G3, G4, G5, we return first because that's exactly what's written in G1. So if we wanted to return the third value, we would just type 3 as the index number and hit enter. Okay, so fundamentally that is how the choose option works. So let's take a look at that in action and incorporating it into the VLOOKUP. Okay, so equals VLOOK. Have I typed that right? Yes. Equals VLOOKUP, open brackets, just as we started before. We're going to look at this as our lookup value, comma. Now we're going to introduce the choose option, open brackets. Now the index number, this is where it gets a little more tricky. Dead straightforward. Once you follow it, you'll have it forever. What we're going to do first is open the curly brackets, not the normal brackets, the curly brackets. Then we're going to type 1, comma, 2 for now, and then we're going to close the curly brackets. So what we've said is choose the index number 1 and 2. So now what we need to do is add values into those index numbers 1 and 2. Before we pointed to the words first, second or third. And now what we're going to do, rather than introduce a single value, we're going to introduce a range of values. So our first index, our first value range is going to be where our lookup lives. And we're looking for green, and that appears in this column. So our first value, value 1, is going to be the range C3 through C7. Okay, so now we've satisfied number 1 of the choose option. So 1 will be C3 to C7. Comma. Now we need to load the second range or value 2. Now depending on which column we want to look up, we'll just point to whichever one. So let's say for argument's sake we want to find the name of the person. So the second value or the second value range will be A3 through A7. Okay, so they are our 2 values that we're going to choose from with our choose 1, 2. Okay, comma. Now, unlike VLOOKUPs where we go column 1, column 2, column 3, column 2 is going to be the second of our choose options. So even though it's in column A, it's actually going to be column index 2 because it is the second of our choose options here. So comma 2 will return something from A3 to A7, comma, and then false, just like we did before, and hit enter. So there you go. If we want to know who has green eyes, it's Katie. and it's read from column 2, which in our formula, our column index number 2, our second option is A3 to A7. So if we were to change that and drag that over to here and then hit enter, we haven't changed the column number, but we do get a different result. We now get blonde because we have now moved column index 2 to range B3 to B7. So now we get the answer blonde because that is in column B. So let's just expand that for a second just for fun. So we could add 3, and you can keep adding to these, it can keep going on. So now our first option in the choose section of this formula is range C3 to C7. Our second option is B3 to B7. So let's add our third option, comma, as A3 to A7. So now we have 1, C3 to C7, 2, B3 to B7, C, A3 to A7. And if we turn from number 2, we're going to be returning a value from the second column, which is the B column. So hitting enter still returns blonde. But if we wanted to return from column A, that is the first, second, third, first, second, third. We will now say column index number 3, which will read from column A. So when I hit enter, we now find that Katie has green eyes. So if we were to say brown, enter, we can now see that Paul has brown eyes. So there you go. Play around with both of them. Find out which one works best for you, and whichever one you're most comfortable with, use that one. Okay, I'll see you in the next lecture.